On today's show, the Pacers take a commanding 3-1 series lead over the Knicks behind Tyrese Haliburton's incredible 30-point triple-double, how Indiana dominated the possession battle, what's wrong with the Knicks defense, and more. It's all coming up right here at Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. And joining me is my partner in crime, the host of Locked On Heat, David Ramil. David, what'd you see in that Game 5 battle between the Pacers and Knicks?
Tyrese Haliburton having the game of his life. I think that was as good a starting point as any for our discussion today because he was phenomenal.
Oh, it absolutely is, and we've got so much to get into on today's show. First, we want to thank you for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen each and every day. For your next listen, go check out the Locked On, your favorite show on the Locked On Network for your favorite team. We are going to get into this pivotal Game 4 where the Pacers go up 3-1. Tyrese Haliburton playing out of his mind, playing overrated? I don't think so, right? Let's go out to Locked On Pacers for more.
Pacers 130, Knicks 121. The first home win for any team in the series. It's the Pacers, and they're up 3-1 in the Eastern Conference Finals. Tony East here with Locked On Pacers. Exceptional game from several Pacers, but Tyrese Haliburton stealing the show with his second ever playoff triple-double, but this one by far his greatest given the stage. Given his production, 12 boards, 15 assists, 32 points, 4 steals, no turnovers. That's an insane stat line. Throwing amazing passes, getting 2 feet in the paint, doing all the stuff that he wants to do at his best. And he had his sidekick, Pascal Siakam, with 30 along the way. Benedict Mathurin with the most points by any player, playing less than 14 minutes in a playoff game ever. Better defense. The Pacers played the way they wanted tonight after not playing that way in Game 3. They got to win. They have 3 chances to win once and make the NBA Finals for the first time since 2000. Locked On Pacers will have more.
Heard the stat line there from Tony for Tyrese Haliburton. He's just the third player in NBA playoff history with a 30, 10, and 15 stat line. Oscar Robertson did it twice. Nikola Jokic has done it once. He's also the first player in NBA playoff history with a 30, 10, 15, and 0 turnover game. And look, we're going to focus on the Knicks next segment and kind of what went wrong for them, where they failed in this Game 4. But to juxtapose the fact that Tyrese Haliburton had 15 assists and 0 turnovers to just 17 assists as a team for the Knicks to go along with 17 turnovers is kind of wild to think about, and just shows you how surgical Haliburton is offensively with what he does for this Pacers team, being the engine for this Pacers offense.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal. I keep talking about this because I maybe the listenership for this particular show might not believe it, but Haliburton, I think, is just emerging as a star in a grander scheme. To me, the playoffs are always about luring those peripheral fans because that's really what it's about. You don't follow the 82 game schedule as well, and we know this. It's because by virtue of the ratings, we know that you're approaching a wider fan base. Maybe you're not tuning into your team because they've been eliminated by the playoffs, but you're still a basketball fan. You want to watch the Pacers a little bit more closely, and you're seeing Haliburton become, I think, a superstar on a national level. And while you and I might have had high opinion of him prior to this season or anything like that, I think it's just become bigger and bigger in terms of how he's reaching a wider audience and recognizing his greatness. Surgical is such a great word because he was absolutely precise. A little bit of a funk there where he wasn't able to knock down a couple of shots that maybe he might have hit otherwise. And yet, despite that, such an incredibly productive night. He was dominant in the first quarter, really helped the Pacers kind of keep pace with the Knicks and control the tempo. That was something that was obvious from the get-go, that they wanted to push the ball, make New York uncomfortable, and they did such a great job of that. And then on top of that, his passing was otherworldly, getting guys like Siakam going, Aaron Nesmith, etc. So many great opportunities based off of his incredible passing, and it's just phenomenal to see Haliburton continue to emerge at this stage. playing the biggest games of his career and becoming the superstar that we all knew he was.
Absolutely. And watching guys who are such gifted scorers and playmakers, and we've talked about this on this show before, and it's been a bit of a talking point, right, even throughout the series, is when Haliburton plays more aggressive offensively, it's better overall for the Pacers. There's something like when the last 10 games where he scored 20 plus, they're like 10-0 or something ridiculous like that. Yeah. I don't have the specific stat right in front of me, but it certainly feels that way, where Hallie is such a willing passer. His natural inclination, right, is pass first, look to get other guys involved. But there are just points where in a playoff series, in these high stakes, high leverage moments, you have to be that guy and go out there and score and put points on the board for your team. And Haliburton very much felt like he took that to heart. He looked at his performance in Game 3, came out and was so much more aggressive there. Just even from the opening jump there in the first quarter. Finished the first quarter halfway to a triple-double after one frame, had 15, 5, and 6 after the first quarter. He had 20 at halftime and was flirting with the triple-double right there with the 9 boards and the 9 assists. I will say the most unique thing about this game for me was his activity on the glass in particular. He led the team with 12 rebounds. The next highest pacer in the rebounding department was Pascal Siakam with just 5. And I don't know if that was like a strategic shift from Carlisle or it just so happened that the ball bounced his way a lot in this game. But what it felt like happened is Haliburton was getting these boards and he was able to just ignite the fast break immediately with those kick ahead passes, looking down the court, pushing pace in transition. And that really, tilted the game in the favor of the Pacers. Fast break opportunities have been largely in the favor of Indiana this series. They won the fast break battle in this game 22-9. And that's been a constant struggle for the Knicks, dealing with the tempo of, the Pacers.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's interesting to see how adept he is at rebounding and then being able to ignite their offense that way and jumpstart a lot of easier baskets, transition baskets that might not normally get if New York is settled into their defensive scheme and everything like that. But I think it also has a little bit to do with Knicks personnel, a segment that we'll say for the next segment, or at least we'll talk about it a little bit more in detail there, because I think the Indiana Pacers have figured out a way to expose some rather glaring weaknesses in New York, and one of those things that they can't control so easily because it just comes so naturally to them. This is the way this team is built, is by pushing the pace, igniting that easy transition opportunity, and getting some good points up that way. So I want to talk about Pascal Siakam because again,
I'm glad that's where we were going next. I was going to steer it there if you weren't going to steer it there. So by all means, give me your thoughts on Pascal, because he was sensational in this game as well.
Absolutely. I mean, he is such an under the radar player. Again, for the peripheral casual fan, you probably don't even know this name, but you watch him play. 3 of 4 from the 3-point range, 11 of 21 overall, 5 of 6 from the line, also 5 rebounds, 2 assists. Really solid overall games and great defensive possessions as well. Just a really great all-around player. This move to Indiana, again, maybe you're kind of questioning whether or not that's the right fit or whether or not he's going to blend in as well, but he's just become even better a player. He's just, I think, more polished even as he's gone older, and that's an incredible transformation for a player that was already really good and gotten even better. And it's just, you're seeing it again on this mega stage here against a great team like New York, and he's just emerged into this really star player that's so productive and really just tilts the game in Indiana's favor. It's just it's been great to watch both of them really kind of just blow up this scene.
Oh, absolutely. And look, he had a huge of those 3 triples that he hit. And probably the biggest one of the game was to kind of stem the run that the Knicks kind of went on there in the fourth quarter. There was a 10-2 run to cut it to a 6-point lead at one point in the fourth quarter that New York went on. And then there was, a little bit of back and forth. Bridges hit a couple big shots, and then Siakam had an answer 3-pointer to push the lead back out to 9. And then Bridges canned another 3 to cut it back to a 6-point deficit. So there was a point where, New York was trying to claw back into it, but they couldn't get it any closer than 6, down the stretch late in this game. But, Siakam, he just gives them that. I feel like ever since they picked him up, he's so effective, with his back to the basket, posting. He's one of those rare, kind of tweener forwards. And there's, it's really hard. He's oftentimes a mismatch nightmare for the other team. Guys that are big enough and strong enough to deal with him might not be fast enough to deal with him. And then vice versa. If they are fast enough, then they don't have the size, and constantly finding the right mismatches with him, with a smaller player on his back, posting them up down low. and just, being able to operate out of that mid-range, that mid-post area for Siakam, the Knicks it really didn't feel like they had an answer for him. And then the other big contributor, because it was a triumvirate here in this game for the Pacers, was Bennedict Mathurin, who shook off the rust from those first 3 games, really struggled the first 3 in this series, as, young players do occasionally in the postseason, but showed up in a big way in this one. 20 points on just 8 shots, was 10 of 11 at the foul line, got there a ton during that stretch in the third quarter, where the Knicks were, or I apologize, not in the third quarter, in the fourth quarter, where the Pacers found themselves in the bonus really quickly. And his spark off the bench was integral for the Pacers in this one.
Absolutely. Getting to the line, I mean, drawing contact, just, taking advantage of some mismatches there with the Knicks defense, and some costly mistakes from New York, probably making too much contact, trying to be a little bit overtly physical, hoping they could get away with it and not get those calls. But the calls went in Indiana's favor, and Mathurin absolutely took advantage of those. And to get to the line 11 times is a pretty impressive showing, but also 5 of 8 from the floor for his 20 points. I mean, that a really solid game. And I think Aaron Nesmith also was a really solid contributor with 16 points, 5 of 9 from the floor, 2 of 6 from 3-point range. So you're getting great contributions. Again, with a playmaker like Haliburton, it's easy to get these kind of wide open looks or to be able to take advantages of these seams in the defense. Indiana has done that all season long, and they continue to get better as the season progresses, and New York is finding that out now.
Plus Aaron Nesmith's defense on Jalen Brunson. He's the only guy that can stay glued to Jalen Brunson on that Pacer squad. Yeah, it's watching
so much fun to watch. Yeah, he is so physical with him, and Brunson throwing his head back, always trying to grift for that call. And it doesn't matter. I mean, Nesmith is going to get the foul on every occasion here and there, but for the most part, just watching him just kind of take on this challenge, you see them jaw him back and forth. I would love to be a fly on the court right there to be able to hear what they're saying to one another, because I'm sure it's not PG friendly, but at the same time, it would just be really interesting to hear these two guys go back and forth.
Coming up, where the Knicks failed in this game and what changes they need to make to keep this series alive. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, you know what time it is. Playoffs means big performances and even bigger rewards. DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh, You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order of $20 or more. Use the code WINGSTOP50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid noon until midnight the day after the game. Terms apply. What's your go-to move after an epic game? Are you ordering wings and reliving the highlights? Imagine being rewarded with free food just because someone went off for 50. So here's the play. Sign up for Dash Pass to unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. When any player scores 50 plus in a playoff game, Dash Pass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the next day with a $20 or more order and code WINGSTOP50. That's Dash Pass, your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply. And continuing on here at Locked On NBA Game Night. Thanks so much for making Game Night your first listen each and every day. For your next listen, go check out Locked On Pacers with Tony East, or you can swing by Locked On Knicks with Gavin Shaw and Alex Wolf, the latter of whom we're going to hear from right now, the immediate reaction to this devastating Game 4 loss.
The Knicks lose to the Pacers in Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals. I forget what the score is. I went to look before I started recording this, and then I said, what's the point? It doesn't really matter what the score was. They're down 3-1 at this point. That's all that really matters. Unfortunately, the 14 points they were up in Game 1 that they blew in the final 3 minutes feels extra rough right now, because now the Knicks find themselves in a place that only 13 teams in NBA playoff history have ever dug out of in a 7-game series, which is down 3-1. And that's pretty tough. It's going to be tough. They have to win every single game from here on out. This thing either goes the distance and goes 7 for the Knicks to win, or they're out in 5, 6, or 7 if they lose one more game. It sucks, man. I'm not going to lie to you. There was a lot of things that went wrong in this game, and unfortunately, my confidence level, not super high, considering that a lot of the same things that have been happening the entire series just happen in excess in this game, and a lot of them come down to decisions that Tom Thibodeau either made or didn't make. his over faith in Josh Hart against all odds. Their love will never be broken. That's for sure. That's the one thing I can take out of these playoffs is Tibbs's love for Josh Hart can survive anything, including him basically turnovering and fouling the Knicks right out of this game almost by himself. So anyway, yeah, that's it. To quote the great Marshawn Lynch, I was pretty much just here so I don't get fined. So that's all I got to say. Hopefully the Knicks can be number 14. That's what I'm going to be hanging my hat on for the next game, and then hopefully the game after that, and hopefully the game after that. But we'll see what ends up happening. We'll have you covered on Locked On Knicks.
Oh, man. All right. Alex is a little down bad after that game. Honestly, I've been there. I feel that. We've all been there at some point or another. Being down 3-1 is a bad feeling. So let's start with what went wrong in this game for the Knicks, David. I know I highlighted there in segment 1 briefly, kind of juxtaposing the Pacers, ball security, them taking care of the basketball, and the Knicks not doing so, right? The 17 turnovers to the tune of 20 Pacers points. That felt like an issue. The transition defense felt like an issue. What to you felt like the biggest issue, though, in this game?
I think it's just the way that the Knicks have been built during this current iteration, whether it was last year with Julius Randle or even this year with Karl-Anthony Towns and with Brunson, Hart, etc., especially the style, and Alex pointed out Josh Hart's style of play, but it feels like so much of the Knicks' success has been kind of chaos magic having to work in their favor, where they're kind of living right there on the edge. And you need that energy because crazy things happen when you have, when you view that energy into a game. Sometimes they're positive. A lot of times they're positive. The Knicks are here in the Eastern Conference Finals for a reason. And then conversely, you have games like tonight where you're just fouling needlessly, turning the ball over, forcing a pass you don't need to. A lot of that falls on Hart, but a lot of that falls on a couple of other players too. There were just some crucial mistakes down the stretch where you're kind of banking on things going for you. It's not going to work. You cannot sustain it. You need something that you can go to a little bit more consistently. You need to play a little bit more effectively and cut down on those crucial mistakes in the waning moments of the game, because we've seen the Pacers and we know what they're capable of, especially down the stretch. They play better as the game progresses, especially when it gets into a clutch situation. And you cannot just, hope that Jalen Brunson is going to bail you out. He was phenomenal tonight. He had a great stat line. It's not enough. You need to be able to make smart decisions down the stretch, and that's not what the Knicks do.
It was tough because I did think some of obviously, Tibbs inserting Mitchell Robinson into the starting lineup,
Sure.
Making a major adjustment there. But then what kind of an adjustment is it really if you're starting Mitchell Robinson and he still only plays, winds up playing 19 minutes and you're still running, Josh Hart ragged out there with his 36-minute performance? I don't know. I felt like the direction that Tibbs was going, reaching a little bit deeper into the bench, right? Going to guys like DeLon Wright, Landry Shamet. Even though DeLon Wright had a couple, maybe a couple Shaq and a fool moments in this game, he finished a plus 11 in his minutes. And I kind of liked that he staggered Brunson and Cat a little bit more, but there was a stretch out there where there was no Brunson and Cat was out there, and the Knicks were just not going to Cat each possession down. And that felt like so many wasted offensive trips because Karl-Anthony Towns has a mismatch against whoever's guarding him in this series. It doesn't matter if it's Miles Turner. It doesn't matter if it's a small and they're trying to blitz the ball out of his hands. He has a mismatch advantage on whoever is guarding him. And for the Knicks to not capitalize on those possessions, playing through Cat, your best player on the floor when Brunson is sitting, felt like, just poor, I guess, game plan discipline, maybe from some of the other guys out there, some of the guards. And maybe, again, some of that is Josh Hart, doing whatever he was doing in this game with the turnovers and the ill-advised downhill drives and some things like that. So I don't know. I'm with you because I feel like the Knicks are they've been so close in these games. Like, I don't think this is a series where the Pacers are just the dominant force, even though they've come out and they've won, right? The Pacers have won and taken 3 of these 4 games. That being said, the Knicks are right there on the doorstep, and it just feels like there's these their margin for error is so thin. And then when you have things stack up against you, like the turnovers, like the fast break, battle, you're not winning the second chance points battle, by or you're at least not making up the difference there with the second chance points battle. They had 13 offensive rebounds, but it's not doing enough to offset losing the transition battle, losing the turnover battle, and that's kind of the issue.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. I just, so many things have to break right, and they're not capitalizing on those opportunities. It's just, I think a lot of that too has to do with Karl-Anthony Towns. I think this was a really definitive series for him in a lot of ways. And as good as he's been offensively, he's been just as poor defensively. And I question his effort, his intensity. There have been a lot of moments there where it just feels almost performative when he's out there. Like he has those moments of extreme emotion and everything else like that. You don't want to ever question somebody's heart necessarily, but these moments seem to come few and far between. And I think over the greater scheme of the game, you see him kind of just tapped out. And I know he was hurt. He was limping around. He did not look right. But he seems to somehow find an extra energy level to pull off an amazing offensive move. But when it comes to defense, he's a no-show. He's non-existent. And you look at the scoreboard here, and when you have Brunson and Towns as two linchpins of your defense, that doesn't bode well. As good as Robinson, Anunoby, Hart, Bridges, etc., can be defensively, that's just not enough when you have these two glaring mismatches defensively out there, guys that your failure is likely to be. So I think Towns has been problematic defensively. His energy level, it's his level of engagement. Like he picked up those 2 fouls early on, really dumb, needless contact fouls there that he could have he's too smart a player and person to make those kind of moves, but it just almost feels like he was half checked out from the beginning and not till later on when he realized, well, gee, I really have to take up some of the scoring lead. Did he seem like he was even slightly engaged? And even then it was just mostly on offense.
Yeah, it really feels like when you're, the Knicks defense is theoretically being so heavily propped up by those three guys. Really, it's OG and McHale on the wings, and then obviously they made the starting lineup switch, but Josh Hart's still playing 36 minutes out there, right? You're heavily relying on those three guys to be kind of your stoppers and to help kind of mask some of the deficiencies that you have with Cat, with Brunson. But sometimes it just feels too much to overcome, and maybe it's different in other matchups, and maybe that this is just hat tip to the Pacers and the fact that not only is Tyrese Haliburton so effective at picking apart an opposing defense, but on top of that they have so many other secondary and tertiary creators where the ball is constantly humming, right? It's moving from person to person and they're just in constant motion, and somebody's attacking and breaking down the defense, and they're finding kind of those chinks in the armor, I guess, with New York. And there's moments, right, where the Knicks defense gets better, and it's often when one of Brunson or Towns sits down. But when those two guys are on the court together, it feels really hard. It feels like trying to, scoop water out of a sinking ship at some points.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. And I think that's exactly it. It's just the Pacers are too good, and to use the term they used earlier, too surgical, precise, and able to exploit those opportunities. And New York just doesn't have any other way of compensating for it. So I think that's exactly right. It's a great analogy too, because you're hemorrhaging as many points as you're able to score. But Indiana has the advantage because, well, they're a good team offensively, and they can turn up their defense to such a high level that they can just mitigate whatever it is that New York can do offensively too. As good a scorer as Towns is, as good a scorer as Brunson is, you can figure it out. And I think the Pacers have done a really good job of doing that. And I don't know that there are a lot of answers for New York to exploit here. I just don't know what the next stage is. I think this was Tibbs' last ace in the hole, and it's just not going to be enough.
Coming up, which team has a better chance to come back from down 3-1, the Knicks or the Wolves? We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On NBA Game Night. We'll keep things parked out east since we just wrapped up our discussion about the Knicks' kind of deficiencies here in Game 4. But David, when you look at, I guess, both of these series, and we'll start with Knicks Pacers, and down 3-1 now, they've got to try to find a way to keep this series alive. At least for me, I will say, and we remarked on this earlier in the show, but I feel like it's such a mistake for New York to try and match the pace of play of Indiana. And it's almost like you get lulled into it, right? You get lulled into this, okay, they're taking the ball out of the net, they're pushing in transition. So then you feel like you have to match that pace, right? You feel like you need to be running and gunning. And, the moment there's a miss, you're trying to haul up the court and get something going. And that felt like what led to so many of the mistakes for New York in this game, the moments where they shot themselves in the foot. At least on the offensive side of the ball. I feel like in order for them to have a chance in this series to maybe make it back from down 3-1, that's got to be the biggest adjustment, is they've got to go back, like slow things down, right? Make it a slog. You're going to start double big. You're going to go Cat and Mitchell Robinson. Don't make those guys run up and down the court trying to match the Pacers tempo, right? Muck it up, slow it down, and make it an all-out brawl in, a half-court battle as much as you possibly can.
No, I think that's a great point. I think that's exactly it. Rather than playing to your strengths, you're playing into Indiana's hands, and that's just not going to work. I mean, they're too good, and as good as the Knicks have been over the last couple seasons and leading up to this playoff series, they seem like they've lost their identity at just the worst time. And you can't point to injury. It can't point. I mean, that's the excuse that they used last year, and they were obviously hurt. It was not a great look for them to be able to try and match up with a good Indiana team when they were down, when they were hurt as badly as they were. And at the same time, you look at this series, injury hasn't been an issue. I mean, I know Towns was kind of banged up a little bit, but he's still, again, a potent offensive force. You're just not playing to your strengths. And that's a great point, because with Towns out there, you've got a walking advantage in your favor there. You can have him work in the low post, create those opportunities there, be able to slow the game down. He's going to score at the rim or draw contact, get to the line, slows things down. That takes away the transition opportunities for Indiana. Now you're creating the pace that you want to play, that one that you're more comfortable in, and that slows what Indiana can do. And if you can muster up just enough defense, and again, maybe that chaos magic kind of swings in your favor in the fourth quarter when you're back at home, maybe Jalen Brunson has a little extra something going in the fourth quarter. That's how you find a way to win. That's what's led to the Knicks' success over the last couple of seasons. But I don't know. I don't know if they're capable of making that kind of adjustment right now. And you have to give Indiana credit for kind of keeping New York on their heels as well, and kind of imprinting their style of play on a team like the Knicks.
Do the Knicks have enough chaos magic to be able to keep this thing alive and maybe push it to 7, David?
It's different because you've watched the two series, and 3-1 deficits, and not all 3-1 deficits feel the same in this case. I just, the Knicks are that catastrophic game 1 away from being evened up in the series, right? And so that's one way to look at it. Even tonight, I think they were still fairly close until the Pacers just kind of kept going and kept rolling. And if New York is a little bit smarter in the way they handle the ball, and maybe they clean up some of the things that they do offensively, they might be able to have won this game. And that's a completely different temperature of the series if they're able to pull it out. Instead, it kind of feels like, I don't know, an insurmountable one. But I've kind of got to give New York the possible edge here, where they can figure something out. If they go back to New York and they figure it out in game 5, they get closer, 3-2 series, go back to Indiana, keep it rolling a little bit. Who knows? Maybe you can go 3-3, and then from that point on, anything can happen. So New York is I think they're capable of evening up the series, although it just doesn't seem very likely right now. As Alex pointed out, historically, that hasn't been the case.
It certainly hasn't. And look, the Rockets were on the other end of that spectrum. They were banking on being the 14th team to accomplish it back in the first round against the Warriors, and it did not work. They forced the game 7, but unable to complete the comeback. Look, looking at kind of both of these series for me, game 4, despite just if you were to look at the box score and think, okay, Timberwolves only a 2-point loss, they're kind of right there,
right.
After a couple rough first games earlier in the series where they just flat out looked outclassed, right? They came out, they blew out the Thunder in game 3, and then they played them so incredibly close in that game 4. But that game 4 was their missed opportunity. Like, that was where they blew their chance, because their bench was almost as perfect as you could ask your bench to be in that game, with, Dante DiVincenzo having his best game of the playoffs. Nickeil Alexander-Walker going out of his mind, 23 points, 9 of 15 shooting. And they were that close, with Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards being a combined 6 for 20 from the floor. I just don't see a world where the Wolves are going to get that level of bench production again. And we've seen what it looks like when Ant goes off and Randall goes off early in the series. That wasn't enough. It just feels like the stars are going to have to align for the Wolves to even win a game. And so I think I'm with you. I think the Knicks, because of how closely they've played the Pacers basically this entire series, if I was, banking on either team to make that eventual 3-1 comeback, and to at least, we won't say come back all the way and win a game 7, but we'll just say forcing a game 7, I very much feel like it's got to be in the Knicks ballpark at this point, because you look at so many of the close games, you look at so many of kind of the self-inflicted mistakes that New York has made. And again, that's not to take anything away from the Pacers, but that series could very easily be 2-2 in favor of, or not in favor of, but 2-2 tied up with momentum shifting back to New York, with it being 3 more games and them having home court advantage once again. So I don't know, man. Like it's one of those where if New York wins that game 5, like momentum is a very real thing when we talk about these series and playoffs and all that stuff. And I think if you keep yourself alive in game 5 and just force that game 6, they've played well enough on the road to win some of these games, and they just haven't been able to do it yet. Or I apologize, win game 3, but weren't able to pull out another win in game 4. I like New York. I do like their chances to actually get back into this series, despite how downtrodden Alex seemed a segment ago.
It's about creating a belief, the internal belief that you can win these games, and then also being able to play your style of game. I think that was a great point you made earlier, and how Indiana's just taken them out of it, and they just have not been able to find what makes them successful. So if you can combine those things, an internal belief and externally kind of just play the game that you're supposed to at your very best, I like their chances of extending the series. Conversely, I don't think Minnesota has a chance. I think they missed their best opportunity, as you put it, with that kind of bench production, and to unfortunately get that kind of little production from your 2 stars in the starting lineup. That's not going to cut it. So Oklahoma City's been too good. They have that extra gear. They can flip the switch. Minnesota hasn't shown the ability to do so. And whereas Indiana and New York, I think, are a little bit more closely in terms of their talent levels and durability and everything else like that. And while Indiana has shown the ability to kind of go in spurts and create a certain deficit and for them, or overcome a deficit in some cases, as they did in game 1, I just think that Oklahoma City is just too good at being able to say, you know what, this is it. We're gonna do what we do best. And then they just put the clamps defensively, get the shots that they want, and next thing you know, their opponents are looking and going, we were just in this a second ago, and now we're down 15. And I think that's going to be the case in game 5. I think they'll close out the series back in Oklahoma City.
It certainly feels like we are headed for a Thunder Pacers finals, which I, as a basketball fan, I'm going to love that, David. That's going to be a fantastic series, regardless of who makes it out of the respective conferences. We're going to have you guys covered for the playoff preview of that a week from whenever. I guess we're doing the Tuesday night show, so that's, our schedules are all off. This is all Tony East's fault from Locked On Pacers. Just blame him. But with that, we do want to know your thoughts. Who has the better chance to come back from down 3-1? Is it the Knicks? Is it the Wolves? Let us know your thoughts in the YouTube comments. But as always, thanks so much for being here with us on Locked On NBA Game Night. For your next listen, go find the Locked On show for your favorite team. Until then, we will catch you guys on our very next game night.